Can anyone believe this? One morning, I woke up, stepped out onto my land, and saw 83 houses being built right on my property. No notice, no legal documents, just lifeless walls standing tall as if mocking me. Who allowed this to happen? Welcome to the channel. What device are you watching this video on? This land is not just a material possession. It is a part of my family's soul. It's not just an empty plot with a few scattered fruit trees. It holds countless memories. It is where generations of my family have lived, cared for, and nurtured it. I remember my childhood days when my grandparents were still alive, tirelessly tending to this land, gradually transforming it into a beautiful garden filled with fruit-laden trees, lush green vegetable beds, and simple yet warm, love-filled homes. This is where I grew up, where I witnessed my family's love through every harvest, every hardworking step. I feel the love my parents have for me through this land, a love that cannot be measured in money, only in warm hugs and hopeful smiles. In recent days, an unsettling feeling has lingered in my mind. The once peaceful land now feels different. At first, I thought I was overthinking, but the more I observed, the more suspicious details I noticed. The familiar paths, where I used to run and play as a child, suddenly bore strange imprints. Not footprints of people or animals, but deep grooves, as if heavy truck wheels had rolled over them. The roadside grass was no longer intact. Some patches were trampled, others uprooted, exposing fresh red soil that had clearly been disturbed not long ago. Then, strange sounds echoed from afar. I stopped and listened. At first, it was just the wind rustling through the trees. But then, I heard the clanking of metal, the rumble of machinery. There were voices too, but the wind carried them away, leaving only fragmented sounds. I frowned, my heart pounding. What is happening? Who is on my land without my permission? What are they doing there? I tried to make sense of it. Perhaps it was a poacher sneaking in or a group of workers fixing something. But who had allowed them in? My instincts told me something serious was happening. I decided to visit Mr. Tom, my longtime neighbor and a close family friend. He was an experienced man, having worked in construction, and had a peculiar habit. He always stayed up very late. If anything unusual had happened, he would surely know. I knocked on his door and waited before he finally opened it. Under the dim yellow light, I could see the deep wrinkles on his face looked even more pronounced than usual. It seemed he had something on his mind, too. I asked, "Mr. Tom, have you seen any strangers around here recently?" Mr. Tom looked at me for a moment before nodding slowly. He replied, "You've noticed too, huh? I've seen a few trucks coming in at night. Big ones, construction material trucks. They move quietly with their headlights off, but I could see their silhouettes from a distance. Strange, isn't it?" A cold shiver ran down my spine. I said skeptically, "Trucks? At night? On my land? That's impossible." Mr. Tom scratched his chin, deep in thought. He continued, "Not just that. Yesterday, I heard drilling or sawing sounds. At first, I thought you were repairing something, but then I saw some strangers standing near your property's edge." I frowned. "What did they look like?" Mr. Tom sighed. "Hard to say. I only saw glimpses of them. They wore protective gear and seemed to be working on something, and it looked like they didn't want to be noticed." I clenched my fists, my knees growing. "Thank you, Mr. Tom. I'll go check it out right now." That night, I decided to investigate on my own. I grabbed a flashlight, threw on a thick jacket, and followed the path leading to the edge of my land. The darkness was thick, broken only by the chirping of insects. I moved carefully, making sure not to make a sound. The deeper I went, the clearer the signs of disturbance became. I stopped in front of an empty plot that had once been lush with trees. But now, all the trees were gone. The ground was torn up, with deep tire marks from heavy machinery. I shone my flashlight around, and then I saw them. Wooden posts. 1, 2, 3. At least a dozen wooden posts had been erected, as if someone was preparing to lay the foundation for a large construction. I stepped closer, bent down, and touched a small sign partially buried under the dirt. I brushed off the dust, revealing messy handwriting. Lot Note 27, New Housing Development. My heart nearly stopped. Has someone started building on my land? But who? And under what right? I stood up straight, taking a deep breath. Rage began to boil inside me. If someone was deliberately encroaching on my land, I wouldn't let it slide. I need to find out the truth before it's too late. But I never expected the nightmare to escalate so quickly. One clear morning, with the soft sunlight casting a golden glow over the ground, I took a walk around my beloved land. I froze in place, my legs nearly giving out beneath me, my mind overwhelmed with shock. I stood still. Concrete houses, cold and foreign, rows and rows, unfamiliar and uninviting. My hands clenched tightly. Who did this? On my once familiar land, these crude concrete structures had emerged as if they had grown from the earth itself, without a single warning. 83 houses, no construction permits, no notices from the authorities. It was as if they had always belonged there, and I had been the last to know. My mind swirled with unanswered questions. Who was behind this? And why was no one protecting my family's rights? The questions circled endlessly in my head, but the answers felt increasingly out of reach. I rushed toward the first house, my anger uncontrollable. My heart pounded, each step heavier than the last. The closer I got, the stronger my sense of unease grew. And then I saw her. Karen. I couldn't believe my eyes. Karen, the woman I once considered a friend, stood there in the middle of one of the crude concrete houses. Her fiery red hair blazed under the sunlight, making her face look even more defiant. She turned to look at me, a self-satisfied smile curling her lips, as if she stood on a throne, feeling no guilt. What are you doing on my land? This is my family's property. I shouted, unable to contain my fury. The words ripped through the air, filled with rage. My eyes burned with anger, but she only smirked, unfazed. Karen crossed her arms, her gaze gleaming with mockery and bitterness. You think I did this for money? She sneered. 5 years ago, the government took my home without compensation. Now, I'm just doing what they did to me. Isn't this justice? I felt my chest tighten. You have no right to do this. This land belongs to me. You have to stop this immediately. My voice trembled with fury, threatening to tear the air apart. Karen stood her ground, her face unreadable. You can sue, but I already have the approval of the neighborhood council. There's nothing you can do. Her words hit me like a slap, shattering any belief I had in fairness. How could she do this? How could she exploit her power, seizing the land my family had cherished for generations without so much as a notice or my consent? A storm of anger surged inside me. I couldn't let her get away with this. I couldn't let my family lose something so precious. I took a deep breath and turned away. I needed a plan, and I would fight to the end. The very next day, I decided to seek legal help. I couldn't let Karen continue her reckless actions. Karen has illegally built 83 houses on my land. What can I do to protect my rights? I asked the lawyer, my voice firm, my gaze locked onto his. The lawyer looked at me seriously. We need to gather all the necessary evidence proving your ownership and related legal documents. Then, we will file a lawsuit and demand compensation. This is a case of property infringement, and we have the right to take it to court. I nodded, more determined than ever. I want her to demolish all the houses immediately and compensate me for the damages. My words came out like a declaration of war, even though I knew the road ahead would be far from easy. The legal battle dragged on for nearly a year. Every time I demanded Karen stop, She ignored me. She kept building, taunting me with her arrogance. You can't do anything, she sneered whenever I called or confronted her at the site. This land is already approved. Each time she said that, my determination grew stronger. But I also felt a deep frustration. No matter what I said, she wouldn't stop. She kept tearing apart what my family had built over generations. You think you can outmaneuver me forever? You will pay for this. My anger finally erupted. My words burned in the air, filled with fury and resentment. I stood face to face with Karen, my heart raging with betrayal and indignation. Karen, the woman I once called a friend, showed no sign of fear. Instead, she smirked, her sharp eyes gleaming like knives. I have the council's approval. You can sue, but you will lose because I have prepared everything. Her voice was laced with defiance, as if I was nothing but a powerless fool standing before her. Hearing those words, my rage flared even stronger. You think you can deceive me and my family forever? No, I won't let you get away with this. I will fight until the very end, no matter what it takes. Karen shrugged, her smirk unwavering. Go ahead. The court will decide who's right. But I have the council's backing. You can't do anything. She spoke with complete confidence, as if she had already won this battle. I felt a wave of fury crashing over me. I couldn't let her continue. I couldn't let my family suffer such an injustice. Each time she spoke, my resolve hardened. I would fight for my land, for my family's legacy. I couldn't let the injustice continue. I couldn't let the land my grandparents and parents had cared for be taken away without my consent. I would fight until the very end, no matter the sacrifices. Time passed like a storm, and the legal battle between me and Karen stretched on for months, draining me both physically and emotionally. The sleepless nights, endless meetings with my lawyer, reviewing documents and evidence, every moment was like carrying a mountain on my shoulders. But every time I thought about the land, our land, I found the strength to keep going. I couldn't give up, especially when Karen continued to exploit her power and schemes to destroy what my family had built. The day of the trial finally arrived. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with tension. Murmurs spread through the crowd as Judge Anderson entered, striking his gavel firmly on the heavy wooden desk. Court is now in session. I glanced at Karen. She sat there, her eyes hollow, but I could still see the remnants of arrogance within them. She never thought she would lose. She believed money and power would protect her forever. My lawyer stood up, his voice steady and confident. Your Honor, the evidence we have presented clearly proves that the defendant, Mrs. Karen, has unlawfully seized the plaintiff's property without legal authorization. Not only that, but she has also carried out illegal construction and profited from her violations. This is not just a land dispute. It is a blatant disregard for the law and the property rights of a citizen. Karen's lawyer tried to counter, but his voice lacked its previous confidence. Your Honor, my client acted based on approved documents. She had no intention of violating the law. I let out a quiet laugh. No intention of violating the law. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stood up, directly facing Karen. She destroyed the land my family has cherished for generations. She built these hideous houses knowing she had no right to do so. And now she claims it wasn't intentional. Karen turned to me, pressing her lips into a thin line. I saw a flicker of worry in her eyes. But then, she lifted her chin, trying to hold onto the last shreds of her pride. You can't fight the system. I have the council's backing. You think you can beat me? Judge Anderson struck the gavel again, his voice stern. Order in the court. I will now read the verdict. The entire courtroom fell silent. My heart pounded as the judge picked up the document before him, adjusted his glasses, and began to announce the decision. After reviewing all evidence and testimonies, the court finds the defendant, Mrs. Karen, guilty of illegal property seizure, unauthorized construction, and violation of ownership rights. Therefore, the court orders the following. First, Mrs. Karen is required to demolish all 83 illegally built houses within 60 days. Second, Mrs. Karen must compensate the plaintiff in the amount of $45 million for damages to property and emotional distress. Third, due to the severity of her violations, Mrs. Karen is sentenced to 5 years in prison under property invasion and illegal construction fraud laws. A wave of shock rippled through the courtroom. Gasps, camera flashes, murmurs, everything happened at once. I turned to look at Karen. Her face had drained of all color. Her hands clenched the armrest of her chair, her lips trembling. No, no way. She whispered, as if unable to believe what she had just heard. The judge continued, his voice firm and unwavering. Justice does not tolerate greed and abuse of power. I stood up, taking a deep breath. It felt like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I looked directly at Karen, my gaze cold. You thought you could deceive me forever. But in the end, you have to pay for what you've done. Karen lowered her head. Gone was her arrogance. Gone was her self-satisfied smirk. All that remained was a woman completely crushed by the weight of justice. Inside me, a deep sense of satisfaction bloomed. I had won, not just because I had reclaimed my land, but because I had never given up, because I had protected my family and everything that mattered most. Justice had prevailed, and Karen, despite her power, could not escape the truth. Karen didn't reply. She stood there, motionless, her eyes empty, as if all the power and influence she once had abandoned her. I, I don't know what to do anymore, she muttered weakly, like a person utterly broken by defeat. At last, the land, our land, had been protected. I had not let anyone take it away, had not allowed anyone to steal what belonged to my family. This land was more than just property. It was the lifeblood of my family, the memories and values I would protect at all costs. I had done it. Justice had won, and I would never let anyone violate this precious legacy again. After everything, I learned a crucial lesson. Justice belongs to those who fight for it until the very end. If I had given up at the first sign of trouble, if I had accepted the imposition of power, my family would have lost the most precious thing, not just land, but history, the legacy of generations. Karen was a prime example of greed and power abuse. She thought she could cheat the law, use her influence to cover up the truth. But in the end, no one can evade justice forever. What do you think about this story? If you were in the same situation, what would you do to protect your rights? Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy thrilling stories with valuable life lessons like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming stories. Hit subscribe now to explore more emotional and meaningful stories together.